RadioNOW 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.
Hello, I'm Emily Metheny, your host. This week, I got a chance to speak with Tiffany Costley, an attorney with Villarrubia and Rosenberger. During our conversation, Tiffany told us the benefits of working with an attorney and dispelled some myths about media portrayal of lawyers in court. Tiffany, can you talk a little bit about how long you've been with Villarrubia and Rosenberger?
So I've been with Villarrubia and Rosenberger for a little over a year now. So my primary focus is on family law issues, but I do also help with our immigration cases.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say family law, is that custody? Is that divorce? What all is under family law?
So family law is a lot of things. It could be anything from a divorce to adoption. We also do guardianship. There's a lot under the family law blanket. But the other thing we also do is paternity matters for people who have children when they're not married. It's really just, it runs the gamut in a lot of issues that fall under the family law umbrella.
And if someone is in the process of either adoption or they're looking for the guardianship, what's the process of finding a lawyer and what do they need to do to start working with like Villarrubia? So
when you search for a family law attorney, I would say the first step is to make sure that you get someone local to where you're filing. So it's always best, if you can get a good attorney in your county. Like, let's say you live in Hamilton County. It's just convenient for everyone if you are filing in Hamilton County that you get a lawyer in Hamilton County. That's not to say that they can't address cases that are outside their counties, but, sometimes you get travel fees. And the local legal talent is so extensive in Indianapolis and the surrounding counties that you really can't go wrong, and I'm sure that you would be able to find someone in your county. So that would be the first step. I would look for someone who specializes in your practice area. Like, most family law attorneys will list their areas of practice, and some of them will say right there, for example, if you need an adoption, they have lawyers who maybe focus or do a lot of the percentage of their work is adoption. So that's always a good first place to start, is just check them out, look on websites. Google's really great for the search, but there's really so many options in Indianapolis.
And when they go through and they do their research and they find the attorney they want to talk to, what should they bring to that first meeting and what questions should they have at the start?
So really good question, because what most people don't realize is this first meeting is for us to kind of see what your legal needs are. Some people come into the appointment thinking they need one thing, and as they start explaining themselves, the lawyer can actually decide, well, actually, you need this. But bring documentation. I cannot stress that enough. I can't tell you how many people, especially in immigration matters, have very specific questions, but don't bring the documentation. Especially if someone has already filed for a divorce, for example, and you have the paperwork from the other attorney, just bring that. It's a lot easier for everyone involved if they know exactly what's been done in the case. So anything you have. If you're just in the very beginning stages and you don't even know what you would need, I would say just think about things that might be relevant that you might possibly need in regards to that specific issue, and just bring it all. A lawyer's never going to get mad at you for bringing too much information. So we welcome all documentation at appointments.
And so in the case like for adoption or for guardianship, could I bring like my birth certificates, my death certificates, anything like that? Like what kind of documents in general?
Yeah, birth certificates, if you have any IDs, Indiana ID, passports. It's always just good to have, because even if we don't need the documentation to file with the court, sometimes it's helpful for the attorney when they are filing motions on your behalf to make sure that spellings are all correct, to make sure addresses are correct, to make sure all the information that you're providing is current. So IDs, birth certificates, especially if you're filing for divorce, it's always good to bring the birth certificates of the children involved. A lot of people don't realize, hey, did everybody sign the birth certificate? Especially if you're talking about a paternity matter where the parties aren't married. Who signed the birth certificate? Has the paternity affidavit been signed? So really all of that information that relates to the matter that you can think of that would be relevant, just bring it all.
When someone starts thinking that they might need an attorney, when should they reach out?
Really, if you think you need an attorney, you probably need an attorney. That's usually a good rule of thumb. And attorney would let you know if you didn't. It's not going to hurt you to go to a consult just to make sure that everything is on the up and up. And, the consult will figure out very quickly what kind of need you have. And even if that attorney doesn't handle your exact issue, they can point you in the direction of someone who can. And maybe give you directions on how to handle it if attorney's not needed.
No, that's excellent. And you mentioned a little bit ago about filing on your behalf. How does that process work?
So anybody can file a divorce or a family law matter on their own. It's called a pro se action. So you, as just a regular person in Marion County, can file your own divorce. So there's forms regarding all of that on the Marion County website. But anybody can go online and find the forms and file themselves. But the attorney, the good thing about having an attorney is sometimes when people go into family law matters, they think everything is in an agreement and everything is going to go smoothly. But what often happens is what was said before the divorce is filed is not necessarily what's going to happen after the divorce is filed. So when things get contested and there's very specific laws regarding property, child custody, you just never know how someone's going to react. It's always a good idea to have a lawyer that really knows what the laws are, really knows what your rights are as a parent, or as just a regular husband and wife, all those issues. It's just always better to have someone who understands and who's able to guide you through the process and explore all of your options. So, again, you can always do it on your own, but it's always better to have someone who'd be able to advocate on your behalf.
And Tiffany, you just mentioned that your attorney is the guide in the process. How does navigating these situations with an attorney really benefit you, like the client?
A lot of clients, which obviously we go to law school for a reason, and we deal with these matters every day. I would say most people aren't familiar with the process. Nobody wants to go through a divorce, and especially any kind of contested matter. So the thing with attorneys is we do it quite often. So we know kind of the process and what can keep the issue as least contested as possible, and what are some options to avoid going to court altogether. Because I think a lot of people come into this and think, I need to see a judge, I need to go to court, and that's not necessarily the case. Most matters can be handled through mediation and can avoid court entirely and even come to an agreement without mediation. So the good thing about getting attorneys involved is because they can take some of the really complicated issues and make them simple. They can also try to help with some of the problems that the average person wouldn't be aware of, like, for example, going to court and speaking to a judge and kind of the civil procedure issues that obviously a lay person wouldn't be familiar with, and it causes a lot of stress on people, and you're already going through a highly stressful event in your life. So why not take the elements that you don't have to do and give those to an attorney to handle? That way you have more time to really try to get this event past you. That makes sense.
And then Tiffany, if somebody wants to reach out to you or any of the attorneys at Villarrubia and Rosenberger, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to do that is to call our main line. The number is 463-207-9900. We can answer and return your call, set up an appointment. Our office speaks Spanish as well, so if you are Spanish speaking, there are plenty of people that can help you.
What are other things that you wish people knew before reaching out to you? Reaching out to attorneys in general?
I think what I wish they knew is that, I kind of touched on it earlier, but things that happen prior to any filing of any legal action often change once the action is filed. the way that you might have had an agreement verbally, or you might have thought that somebody was getting along and maybe wouldn't take it to a level that it ends up being. Mm-hmm. So I think you need to trust your instinct when you think, okay, it might be best to get a lawyer. And getting a lawyer does not automatically mean that things are going to get more contested and more expensive. Oftentimes, the lawyer knows how to get in and out of a family law or immigration matter the best way, by saving you money, by saving you time, and advocating on your behalf. So just that adding a lawyer does not necessarily complicate things, and often makes it easier and cheaper in the long run.
Mm-hmm. And like you also mentioned earlier, you have the experience mm-hmm. that most people who have not gone through this situation have, because this is something you do on the daily. Right.
I wouldn't expect people who get divorced once, hopefully, or even 2 or 3 times, it's still not the same as a lawyer who handles it all day long, who mm-hmm. knows the ins and outs. And also, we know other attorneys. So often, if there's another attorney involved, we have a working professional relationship with that person. Mm-hmm. We can discuss the best course of action and get you through it quicker and easier. And also, if you involve an attorney from the start, you often have a situation where you're not correcting errors from pro se filings, because obviously the average person doesn't understand mm-hmm. the rules, the trial rules and civil procedure. We don't expect them to. So what can happen oftentimes is the wrong motion is filed, or something was incorrectly submitted, and then by the time you get an attorney involved, they have to undo or redo certain things. So it can often save you money in the long run. Mm-hmm. if that's, it's not just adding a lawyer doesn't automatically add money. Sometimes it saves you time and money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you walk me through the process of that first contact, going through I know it varies from person to person, but what is it like to work with an attorney and a lawyer to get through that process? How does it streamline, besides just not having to worry about correcting papers, misfilings, things like that?
Well, for example, if you wanted to file for a divorce, from that very first appointment, we kind of explain, what your rights are in property, what your rights are in custody if there's children involved. A lot of people ask the question, well, is there an at fault in Indiana? No, it's a no-fault state. Or the presumption is a 50-50 split of marital assets. Mm-hmm. So we just kind of break that down for you, what that means. Is something in my name? Does that mean it's just mine? We talk about all of those issues that the average person has questions. Mm-hmm. We watch TV shows and we see certain things in movies, and a lot of that's not necessarily accurate in real mm-hmm. life. So we kind of just go over the basic, what this divorce will entail and what things we need to look out for. Mm-hmm. From there, you just file your initial petition. A very bare bones, we're asking for a divorce. We do or do not have kids, and we live in this county. Mm-hmm. From there, it really depends on the opposing party. If we have 2 people who are non-contested, pretty much in agreement, no property, that kind of divorce can go a lot quicker mm-hmm. than a divorce where there's children, lots of property, lots of retirement funds. So, the life of the case can be quick. With the quickest is 60 days in Indiana from time of filing to several years in hearings, mm-hmm. depending on the situation. But as long as you filed and everything is signed, you have 60 days that you have to wait before you can ask the court to grant the divorce.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on it earlier, Tiffany. You mentioned that what we see in media is not typically what you see when you are going through the process. Mm-hmm. How does the portrayal of law in media impact what you do on the daily?
I think the most prevalent is that a lot of people really want to go to court, and they want to see a judge, and they really think that they can just talk to the judge and everything will be okay. And I don't know why media and of all forms really just shows, obviously it's the fun part to show court, But really, especially in family law matters, the prevalence of someone being in court really shouldn't happen that often. There's a lot lawyers can do to negotiate. You can mediate beforehand. It really shouldn't. You shouldn't want to go to the judge as your first step. You really want to try to get things handled before, and really only leave the most contested and most important issues for court in the event that you really have to go to court. Most things can be worked out because, again, when lawyers are involved, there are statutes that say what is available to each party. It's all governed by statute. It's not governed by emotion. So someone really feeling that that things should be a certain way doesn't necessarily translate legally. So, lawyers can do a lot to explain the law. They can tell you exactly what could happen and the pros and cons. And honestly, sometimes if you leave things up to the court and you had a better deal in mediation that would be better for all the parties, it can actually make things worse a lot of the times, especially in highly contested issues where people aren't necessarily cooperating with the advice of attorneys. So just this notion that you should just always go to court and talk to a judge, it's not really accurate, and sometimes could be even worse for a client. And not to mention, much more costly.
And Tiffany, as we start to wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add about law, about finding an attorney, about really anything at all?
Just that you should shop around. If you meet the attorney and you're not happy, you can always. Everyone has the right to pick the attorney that they want. So even if you start a case with one attorney, you don't feel like it's going well, there's always options that you have. So I think it's a big decision, and really sometimes the attorney that you pick could determine how smoothly your case goes. If the attorney and you are not on the same page, definitely look for different options. But make sure when you hire the attorney that you really feel like they understand what you're asking for. They understand how you want this, you would like the process to go. And more importantly, that they're available to you and they're answering your questions, and you don't feel rushed, and you don't feel like you don't know what's going on. The attorney should be very responsive to you and should really be available to listen and to guide you through the process.
And one more question for you. If there's anything, is there anything you should ever withhold from your attorney, or should you just tell them everything?
Well, we do have attorney-client privilege. So it's very important that you're honest with your attorney. It does stay between you and the attorney. And if you're not honest and there's something that's relevant that was not brought to your attorney's attention, it could be brought up in a very inconvenient time and place and be extremely detrimental to your case overall. And oftentimes, people think that something is a way bigger issue than it is. So you have a situation where the client refrained from telling the attorney, and the attorney could have addressed the problem outright, and it could have already been dealt with. And if you wait and it comes out later, it just could be devastating, and judges really don't like surprises like that. So, yes, always be honest with the attorney. We'll keep it between us, kind of go from there. We will address what we need to, and we will address it accordingly.
And then one last time, Tiffany, can you tell us how to get in contact with you at Villarrubia and Rosenberger PC Law?
Yes, ma'am. You can reach us directly at 463-207-9900.
Excellent. And is there a website as well?
Yes, we are at www.vrlegal.com.
Thank you for joining me this week, and please join me again next week. If you want to reach out or have topics you'd like to hear more about, email me at emetheny, that's EMETHENY at radio-one.com, or message me on Twitter at EmilyDoesVideo. Until next time, have a great week.
Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.